Hey everyone, Ashley Mailloux here with the Daily Racing Form. This Saturday at Gulfstream Park features the Carryback Stakes, a $75,000 event for 3-year-olds set to go 7 ace on the main track. Field of 7 have been entered. We'll take a look at this race. It's actually an interesting race. The big name towards the outside, the number 7, Super Chow, has been very impressive in his career, but he does come off into this race, off his least impressive performance so far, which was a 5th in the Grade 3 Chick Lang. Other horses such as Kozera seems to be kind of on the improve. Really nice wins in those back-to-back efforts back in April and May at Gulfstream Park. Zydeco, the Pasco winner, comes into this race with that fresh win in the sophomore, and a couple of others who recently graduated in their last out efforts. So we'll start with the number 1, Kozera, and we'll just jump into that replay for that most recent effort back on May 19th at Gulfstream Park. That allowance optional claiming event was not in for the tag, and this horse has been pretty sharp out of the gate consistently throughout his career so far. But I liked that when Lionel Rey called upon him, he had more to offer. You can see in the stretch he kind of got out a little bit, but once a couple of taps of encouragement with that right hand stick, ends up getting back into kind of a straight trajectory. Moves forward in there to win by a length and a quarter. Prior to that, though, this horse was able to win at 7 ace against fellow Florida breds, and I think draws to the inside also a benefit. Just knowing that this horse has done well with those more inside posts and has that early speed. And Lionel Rey has had a tremendous meet, winning at 20%, always one to watch at Gulfstream Park, and this horse is 7-2 on the morning line. Number 2, Zydeco. We'll take a look at his most recent effort for the son of Cajun Breeze. Was able to win against Florida breds in the sophomore at today's distance. Now that obviously at Tampa, but I like that he also was able to kind of kick in similarly. I don't think the number was impressive here, but this horse was pretty sharp once again out of the gate, and I think he needed this one in terms of a confidence boost. I thought he looked pretty good in the stretch. Prior to that, Tampa Bay Derby, and then in a previous effort in the Sam F. Davis, and he'd be part of the pace in both of those, and he just tired late. And I think, yes, he was facing better, but it was also maybe a distance limitation, 1 1/16, 2 turns, probably not in his wheelhouse. He's really done well at the 7 ace distance. He's also won the Pasco at the distance, and I think looking at his efforts, the Pasco is probably his most impressive. I did show that most recent replay, though, because I think he needed that confidence-boosting effort, and we haven't seen him since that win in the sophomore. And he does have just that one published work, 47-2, the third fastest of 90 workers at Gulfstream Park. So he obviously was moving speedily very quickly over the surface there at Gulfstream back on June 10th. Jose Morales going to ride him for the first time. The number 3, Sound Doctrine. This one out of the Jose D'Angelo barn. Didn't show too much debuting at the $35,000 maiden claiming ranks. Put him on the shelf for a little bit. Brought him back on May 25th. Completely different performance. I mean, you look at him, there wasn't an equipment change, but he was closer to the pace. He was very tactical out of the gate in there, and it was simply much the best. Now he's going to jump into way deeper waters off the bat. He's facing stakes winners. I think this is a really tough spot for him. And he's also got a early foot. You kind of go down the page. A lot of speed in here going 7 ace at Gulfstream. So not sure he's going to be able to kind of hang with this competition. But Jose D'Angelo does well with horses that won last out and continues to have a good meet. The number 4, Swervin. This is 1 out of 2 for the Saffie Joseph Jr. barn. And looking at Swervin, debuted at the maiden special weight ranks back in the beginning of December of 2022. So they did get that appearance in before his 2-year-old season was over. And he had to work for it, but he got the job done. They put him on the shelf, and they brought him back in April, and we'll take a look at that effort in that allowance optional claiming event back on April 15th. I thought it was very impressive for being on the shelf that long, and the way he's able to kind of just hold his own and keep doing his thing in the stretch, I thought was very impressive. I think he had kind of things stacked against him, and just knowing that he had that time off, you wonder why they didn't bring him back earlier, but he ends up getting an 86 Beyer speed figure for this effort. You can see kind of in here in terms of the jocks, going to get a new rider, Edwin Gonzalez, who does well for Saffie from the number of opportunities he's had. He's a horse that, yes, he's going to jump up once again, but he seems to be trending in the right direction. I just love seeing that big jump from his debut to his second career start. His stablemate, though, is the number 5, Mr. Peaks, who was originally in the barn of Ian Wilkes. Raced okay on debut, going 3/4, came back, was just second best in that following effort. And in both of those starts, we saw a lot of that early foot. And then he joins the Saffie Joseph Jr. barn, and they put him in the Florida Derby as a maiden. He pressed the pace in there, tracking in second throughout and tired. Obviously, we know how good of a race that was with the likes of Mage, the Kentucky Derby winner, Forte, and a couple other runners in there. He was over his head in that race, especially going from 6 furlongs to a mile and an eighth. But it was nice to see him able to graduate in his most recent start back on May 13th. Was much the best in that maiden special weight event, and just worth noting, he had to face older horses in there. It was the conditions, I should say, were for 3 and up, which is a little different than a couple of the runners in here, at least at that maiden special weight rank. You can go back and you can say Sound Doctrine, he faced 3 and up as well, but maiden special weight level still going to be tougher than what Sound Doctrine had faced, and 30 cents on the dollar is the price that you were getting. He ends up winning by 6 lengths. He was much the best in that race. It was nice to see him kind of turn it around after having to face the Florida Derby competition, I should say, that he faced, then able to graduate that 81 buyer. Edgar Perez had been aboard him now in 3 of his 4 starts and is going to stick with him in here. The number 6, Lightning Tones. This one was claimed 2 starts back for 12.5 by Danny Hertak. They brought this one back at that 7/8 distance once again, and the only outing for the new connections. And he is second best. And one thing that he had in there was the pace setup. He was last in that field early on. He closed really nicely and just missed length in there. And obviously the question is, you claim him for 12.5. He's in the carry back now. He's facing some maybe tougher horses, but he has the experience, and there's just so much pace in here that maybe there is a situation where Lightning Tones is able to pass horses in the stretch and pick up a minor share in here. His buyers, though, from what we've seen, he would need a little bit of an improvement to kind of compete, if that's the angle that you're going to use here. But he is interesting, being basically the only true closer that we've seen so far out of this field. And then rounding it out, the number 7, Super Chow. He basically has one button, and that button is to go from the gate. Just looking at his performances, at Gulfstream he was impressive, and they kind of took him on the road. He'd gone to Saratoga, Pimlico, Keeneland, Tampa, you name it. They've traveled him very, all over the place, and he's held up, and his form's held up. We're going to take a look at that race from 2 starts back on March 18th at Gulfstream in the Hutchinson. Very impressive performance. Chantel Sutherland was his usual rider, was aboard in this race, and he's just going to open up on this field. Now, mind you, he only had 3 other competitors in here, and I think he was the class of the field on paper, but it was good to see him kind of kick clear in there and draw out. And I want to show this race rather than the most recent performance in the Chick Lang. He wasn't nearly as sharp as he was out of the gate, and he tired in there. It just was a very lackluster performance. So I went 2 back to that most recent win. The one thing I will say about him, not only is he just a speed horse, but if you watch some of his replays and you kind of dig into them, he tends to get out in the stretch. Now, he can go, 6 furlongs has been proven, 7/8. I've always wondered, can he go that distance? He was second in his only attempt in the Grade 3 Swale, and I thought he raced very well behind General Jim, who we know has come back to win and has stamped himself as quite the talented horse. And I think 7/8 could be a little far from him, but again, he draws you outside in here. I think that helps his advantages. And we'll see, maybe he needed that start off the layoff. But that's the field of 7 for the carry back. With all that said, I've made a case, I guess, for and maybe against Super Chow. I still went with him on top in here. I think just knowing how well he's been able to kind of hold up in stakes races and just getting back to Gulfstream, I think that helps his chances. So I used him on top. I think the number 1, Kozaris, is very intriguing, just looking at those last couple efforts. I also think, even though Kozaris draws from the inside, this is a horse that can rate if need be and can still, show and pass horses in the stretch. And I think that's really going to be key in here. The 4, Swervin. He's undefeated, 2 for 2 in his career. They look like they've taken his time with him in terms of getting him to the races and then kind of spacing out his races. And I think what we've seen, he's very intriguing. He comes in here off a really big effort, an 86 buyer speed figure. And then rounding out the 2, Zydeco. Zydeco is going to, another one that it's hard to say. I think others might be faster than Zydeco in here, but he's raced very well at the 7/8 distance. He's now going to have to come back to Gulfstream, where I think his Tampa form is slightly better. So for me, I think Zydeco may be worth a shot, at least at a piece in here. But I did go to Super Chow as my top pick. I will say, going to be interesting to watch the tote action in here. I think there could be a big discrepancy between a couple other runners, and the main 2 for me were Super Chow and the 1, Kozaris on the inside. Best of luck, though, in this year's edition of the Carryback.